You are warm right now, and you didn't have to earn it. Heat comes from a wall switch. Your coat came from a store, not from an animal you had to hunt and skin yourself. There's food in your kitchen that will still be there next week, no matter how cold it gets outside. Now imagine all of that gone, just your skin, your hands, and a winter so brutal it could kill you while you slept. That was normal life for our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years. They lived through real ice ages, when massive sheets of ice buried entire continents, and the cold alone could end a life in a matter of hours. And yet, they made it through. You exist because every single one of them won that fight. So how did a species built for warm African plains survive some of the harshest winters this planet has ever produced? To understand how close it really was, we have to look at what they were up against. The worst stretch of the last ice age happened roughly between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago. Thick ice covered huge parts of Europe, Asia, and North America. The land was open, flat, and offered almost nothing to block the wind. Trees were scarce. Food could disappear for months at a time, and biologically, humans were not built for this. We don't grow thick fur. We don't carry a seal's layer of blubber. We can't slow our own heartbeat and sleep through the worst of it like a bear can. Strip away our tools and clothing, and a human in true Ice Age cold has hours to live, not days. Every other large animal around them came pre-equipped for the cold. Humans came with almost nothing except a brain built for solving problems and hands built for building solutions. The first and most essential solution was fire. Humans had already been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years by the time the Ice Age reached its peak, and by then, they weren't just building casual campfires, they were engineering them. Excavated hearths from Ice Age sites in Ukraine show carefully constructed fire pits, some reaching extremely high burning temperatures. When wood became scarce out on the open plains, people adapted by burning animal fat and bone instead. Fire wasn't a luxury. It provided heat, cooked food, hardened tools, and stretched the short daylight hours of winter into something survivable. But you can't carry a fire with you everywhere you go, so the next major leap was learning to carry warmth on your own body. It started simply, with animal skins draped over the shoulders. Evidence suggests humans were processing bear fur for this purpose extremely early in our history, long before modern humans even existed. But a loose hide has gaps, and gaps let heat escape. The real breakthrough came with the invention of the sewing needle, a small tool made from bone or ivory with a narrow, hand-drilled hole. It sounds unremarkable, but many researchers consider it one of the most important inventions in human history because it changed clothing from something you wore to something you were sealed inside of. Fitted sleeves, layered hides, and closed seams trapped body heat in a way a draped skin never could. Some researchers believe better fitted clothing may have given certain human groups a survival advantage over others during this period. On top of clothing, hunters would rub rendered animal fat onto exposed skin before heading out, sealing in warmth and blocking wind. And to protect against snow blindness, some groups carved narrow slits into bone or wood and wore them over their eyes, an early, functional version of sunglasses. Shelter tells a similar story of adaptation. In parts of what is now Ukraine and Russia, there were no caves and very little wood, so people built homes from the largest resource available to them, mammoth bones. At sites like Mizidik, archaeologists have uncovered round structures built almost entirely from mammoth skulls, tusks, and leg bones, packed with hide, moss, and earth for insulation. Some of these structures are roughly 18,000 years old and appear to have been reused across many years. Many of these shelters used a clever design detail, a doorway dug slightly lower than the sleeping area. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it naturally sank and pooled near the entrance, while warmth rose and stayed where people slept. They had figured out basic thermodynamics without ever writing the word down. Snow itself was also used as insulation, since packed snow traps air extremely well and can keep an interior space far warmer than the open air outside. Staying warm solves tonight's problem. Winter's real long-term threat is starvation. To survive months with little food available, ancient humans became highly skilled at preservation. Meat was smoked, dried, and frozen using the cold itself. Food was stored in dugout pits and underground spaces where the earth maintained a stable, cold temperature. There is even evidence some groups submerged meat in cold ponds, weighted down, using the water as a kind of natural refrigeration. Nothing was wasted. Hunting was also coordinated and repeated at the same effective locations across generations, allowing groups to secure large amounts of meat before winter fully set in. Just as important as any physical tool was proximity to other people. Groups often lived in close, shared spaces specifically because body heat from multiple people made a real difference in survival. Isolation was dangerous. Historically, individuals living alone, especially older members of a group, were often the most vulnerable during extreme cold. Life during these periods could also turn desperate in darker ways. When food ran out completely, there is archaeological evidence that some ancient human groups resorted to cannibalism as a last resort survival measure. It's an uncomfortable part of the story, but an honest one. Some human groups adapted biologically rather than just technologically. The Yaghan people of southern South America historically lived in extremely cold, wet conditions while wearing very little clothing. Research suggests their bodies developed a notably higher resting metabolic rate, generating more internal heat than is typical. They also used a tucked, squatting resting position that minimized exposed skin and heat loss. Their solution to the cold wasn't outerwear, it was internal adaptation. And then there's one of the strangest and most debated theories in this entire story. At the Cima de los Huesos site in Spain, researchers studying the remains of early human ancestors, dated to around 430,000 years ago, found unusual seasonal patterns in bone growth, cycles of interrupted development that resemble patterns seen in animals that hibernate. Some scientists have proposed that these early humans may have slowed their bodies down during the harshest winter months to conserve energy, entering something resembling a form of hibernation. It remains unproven, but it's a serious enough hypothesis that researchers are still actively debating it today. What's remarkable is how recent our escape from all of this really is. In a relatively small stretch of time, humanity went from insulating mammoth bone huts with moss and hide to adjusting a thermostat with one finger. The very thing that once threatened to wipe out our species is now something most of us barely think about. A minor inconvenience on the walk to a warm car. We didn't just survive winter. Eventually, we made it disappear as a threat entirely. But for most of human history, that was never guaranteed. Every winter was a test, and every one of your ancestors passed it.